It all started on a scorching afternoon in Los Angeles, California, where palm trees lined the streets and the sound of luxury cars echoed through the sun-soaked avenues. Inside, one of the tallest skyscrapers sat the headquarters of Valence International, a company known for its ruthless CEO and its even colder boardroom. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and comment where you're watching from. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's dive in. Her name was Grace Mbele, a woman in her late 20s. She had warm, dark brown skin, natural curls tied neatly, and a quiet strength about her. Grace worked as a junior administrative assistant, at least that was the title on paper. In reality, she did everything from scheduling meetings to cleaning up after arrogant executives who treated her like part of the furniture. Grace came from Compton, raised by her grandmother after her parents died young. Education was her escape. She had graduated with honors in economics, but despite her brilliance, she couldn't land the roles she deserved. Every interview ended the same. "We'll get back to you." But they never did. Still, she smiled through it all, because quitting wasn't in her blood. The CEO of Valence International, Richard Galloway, was the kind of man people whispered about. Tall, silver-haired, always in a sharp suit with icy blue eyes that could cut through glass. To him, Grace was invisible. He barely remembered her name. When he did, it was only to bark orders like, "Coffee. Now." That day marked the beginning of a storm inside Valence International. Richard scrapped the merger, saving the company from a financial disaster. The board buzzed with whispers about the assistant who outsmarted them all. Some tried to discredit her, saying she must have had help. Others grew curious, wondering what else she knew. Richard called her into his office the next morning. "I don't like being embarrassed," he began, pacing behind his desk. Grace's stomach dropped. Was this the end of her job? But then he stopped and looked at her differently. "But I like losing money even less. From today, you're not an assistant. You'll be my junior analyst. Prove to me you deserve it." Grace blinked, holding back tears. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you." The months that followed weren't easy. Some colleagues resented her promotion. They whispered about favoritism, about a diversity hire. She endured their cold stares, their side comments, but she kept her focus on the work. Each report she delivered, each analysis she ran, proved her worth. Slowly, her voice began carrying weight in meetings, but resentment only grew. One afternoon, she overheard two senior managers talking in the hallway. "She thinks she's special because Richard likes her numbers," one sneered. "Let's see how long that lasts. She doesn't belong here." Grace clenched her fists, but walked on. She'd learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than anger. She would let her work speak for her. Meanwhile, Richard watched her carefully. At first, he questioned whether her insight at the merger meeting was a one-time stroke of luck. But week after week, her ideas reshaped the company's strategy. She identified risks that others overlooked, spotted opportunities no one dared to pursue, and carried herself with a calm confidence that unsettled the older executives. Still, Richard never made it easy. He was cold in his praise, always demanding more. "Don't get comfortable, Grace," he would say after she presented a brilliant analysis. "One good report won't carry you forever." But behind closed doors, he began reading every line of her work, studying her ideas long after she left the office. She was no longer invisible to him. 1 year later, Valence International faced another crisis, an international competitor trying to crush them out of the market. The board panicked, but Grace, calm and steady, devised a strategy that not only protected the company, but expanded its reach across North America. The plan wasn't just numbers and charts, it was bold. Grace suggested partnering with smaller, overlooked tech firms in cities like Atlanta, Detroit, and Austin. "They're hungry," she told Richard in a late-night strategy session. "They innovate faster than these corporate giants. If we give them resources and visibility, they'll drive our growth." Richard frowned. "Risky, unconventional." Grace met his gaze. "So was dismissing me when I spoke up in your boardroom. But you listened, and it saved you billions. Trust me again." He did. And it worked. Within months, Valence was not only secure, but stronger than ever. Their competitor retreated, blindsided by Grace's unconventional approach. Richard called her into the boardroom in front of every executive who once mocked her. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "meet our new Director of Strategic Operations, Grace Mbele." The room erupted in polite applause, but Grace could see the awe in their eyes. The same men who once laughed at her now bowed to her expertise. Some clapped begrudgingly, others with genuine respect. She didn't care which. What mattered was that her voice could no longer be ignored. Later that evening, standing by the glass windows of the skyscraper, Grace gazed at the city lights of Los Angeles. Her grandmother's words echoed in her heart. "They may see you as less, but never see yourself as less. Your time will come." It had. Grace wasn't just a woman from Compton anymore. She was the woman who changed everything. A polite smile, and quietly stepped back. Inside, though, her chest burned. She had written her university thesis on corporate mergers. She knew more than half the people sitting at that table. But they saw her only as a black woman from Compton who was lucky to have a job. The meeting dragged on. Charts were thrown up on projectors. Richard spoke in his commanding tone, but something was missing. The numbers weren't adding up. The merger had cracks, ones nobody seemed to notice, except Grace. She stood silently in the corner, heart pounding. Should she speak, or should she remain invisible as always? When one of the executives suggested signing the deal immediately, Grace couldn't hold it anymore. She cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me, sir. If I may." The room turned to her with looks that could kill. Richard's icy glare narrowed. "Grace, what are you doing?" Her voice shook for just a second, but then she found strength. "With respect, the projections in your financial model don't align with market trends. If you sign this merger as it stands, Valence International could lose billions in 2 years." Silence. A few chuckles. Someone muttered, "The maid thinks she's an economist now." But Grace pressed on. She walked to the projector, adjusted the slides, and began pointing out inconsistencies, flawed assumptions about growth, hidden debt in the partner company, and gaps in the risk analysis. For the first time, Richard didn't interrupt. His eyes locked on her. The room shifted. Executives leaned forward, realizing she wasn't guessing. She was right. By the time Grace finished, there was no laughter left. Only stunned silence. Richard's jaw tightened. "Where did you learn all this?" he asked, voice sharp but shaken. Grace straightened her shoulders. "At UCLA, economics, first-class honors." The same manager who mocked her earlier sank in his chair. Richard dismissed the board and asked Grace to stay behind. The door closed, leaving only the two of them. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at her as though seeing her for the first time. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that my entire board missed this, and you, an assistant, caught it?" Grace met his gaze calmly. "Not an assistant, an economist who hasn't been given the chance." The words hung heavy in the air. But the story didn't end there. As director, she made it her mission to open doors for others like her. Brilliant minds overlooked because of where they came from, or what they looked like, or the accents they carried. She started an internship program aimed at students from underprivileged neighborhoods, giving them access to opportunities she never had. The same executives who once sneered at her found themselves reporting to interns who reminded them of Grace. Quiet, sharp-eyed kids who asked the questions no one else dared. And each time one of those interns proved their worth, Grace felt a surge of pride. Richard, too, began to change. His icy demeanor softened. He never admitted it out loud, but Grace had taught him something priceless, that arrogance blinds leaders, while humility saves them. One evening, as they stood in his office overlooking the skyline, he said quietly, "You know, I used to believe power was about control, about making people fear you. But watching you, I realize now that power is about making people believe in you." Grace smiled. "Then maybe you're finally learning." Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "Don't get used to me being sentimental." But Grace knew the truth. She had not only saved a company, she had reshaped its culture, and in doing so, she proved that brilliance, no matter where it comes from, cannot be silenced forever.